As a college student with a limited budget, I often took long drives through the countryside to unwind, the open road offering a respite from the pressures of campus life. The solitude was comforting, but occasionally, I'd pick up a hitchhiker to break the monotony. Most were harmless, grateful travelers with stories to share. But one night, everything changed. It was late, the sky a deep indigo as I drove home from a weekend camping trip. The road twisted through dense forests and rolling hills, the air crisp with the scent of pine filtering through my cracked window. The silence was serene, broken only by the hum of my tires on the asphalt. Then, in the glow of my headlights, I spotted him. A lone figure trudging along the shoulder, head bowed, hands buried in the pockets of a worn jacket. He seemed weary, as if he'd been walking for hours. When he noticed my car, he raised a hand in a tentative wave, his face pale and strained in the light. Against my instincts, I slowed and pulled over. He jogged to the passenger side, leaning in through the open window. Up close, he looked to be in his mid-20s, with disheveled hair and eyes that carried a restless intensity. "Need a ride?" I asked, keeping my tone light. "Yeah," he said, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "Thanks. Just trying to get far from here." His voice was clipped, urgent. He slid into the seat, slamming the door harder than necessary, and I pulled back onto the road. As we drove, his behavior set me on edge. He sat rigid, his gaze flicking to the rearview mirror every few seconds, as if expecting something or someone to appear. The quiet stretched, heavy and uncomfortable. "Where you headed?" I asked, hoping to ease the tension. "Doesn't matter," he muttered, his eyes still darting to the mirror. "Just far from here." His vagueness unnerved me, but I brushed it off, assuming he was shaken from a bad experience. Maybe a fight, or trouble he didn't want to share. But his unease was contagious. He leaned forward, scanning the road ahead, then twisted to peer out the back window. His fingers tapped restlessly on his knee. "What's got you so jumpy?" I asked, half laughing to mask my growing discomfort. He hesitated, his jaw tightening. "Someone's following me," he said, his voice low and raw. "They've been on me for miles. Every time I think I've lost them, they're back." I glanced at him, skeptical. The road behind us was pitch black, no headlights in sight. "Out here? We're the only ones around, man." He shook his head, his eyes locked on the mirror. "You don't get it. They're always there." I wanted to dismiss it as paranoia, but the fear in his voice was visceral, almost palpable. It made the hairs on my neck prickle. I kept driving, trying to focus on the road, but his words lingered, heavy in the air. Then, as if summoned by his fear, headlights appeared in the distance, closing in fast. At first, I thought it was just another car, someone speeding through the night. But as they drew closer, their lights glaring in my rear view, I noticed their erratic swerving, as if they were deliberately tailing us. My passenger stiffened, gripping the edge of his seat. "That's them," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I knew they'd find me." My heart quickened. "Maybe they're just passing," I said, more to convince myself than him. But the car didn't pass. It matched our speed, inching closer until its headlights flooded my car, casting harsh shadows across the dashboard. My passenger's face was illuminated, his eyes wide with terror. I pressed the gas, my hands tightening on the wheel. The car behind us swerved closer, its bumper nearly kissing mine. "They're trying to run us off the road," my passenger hissed, his voice trembling. "Take the next turn, left the service road." I hesitated, The old service road was a narrow, winding path that led nowhere, used mostly by loggers decades ago. But the pursuing car was relentless, its lights blinding in my mirrors. Against my better judgment, I yanked the wheel left, tires screeching as we veered onto the rutted path. The trees closed in, their branches scraping the sides of my car. Behind us, the headlights wobbled as the other car struggled to follow, skidding slightly as they misjudged the turn. For a moment, it seemed we'd lost them. The service road twisted through the forest, its uneven surface jolting the car. My passenger barked directions. Left, right, sharp, left again, his voice urgent, almost frantic. My heart pounded, my palms slick on the wheel. Finally, after a series of hairpin turns, the headlights behind us vanished. I slowed, my breath ragged, my pulse thundering in my ears. "Thanks," my passenger muttered, slumping back in his seat, his face pale. I thought I'd never lose them. Who the hell were they? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. He didn't answer, just stared out the window, his expression unreadable. The silence that followed was suffocating, filled with unspoken questions. I wanted to press him, but something in his demeanor, closed off, almost haunted, told me I wouldn't get answers. After a few minutes, he spoke again, his tone sharp. "Just take me home." There was a desperation in his voice that made my skin crawl. "Look, I think we should head to a police station," I said firmly. "They can help you." His face twisted, a flash of anger in his eyes. "Number no police. Just drop me at the next gas station. I'll find another ride." Reluctantly, I agreed. When we reached a dimly lit gas station, he climbed out without a word, vanishing into the shadows of the parking lot. I sat there, my hands still gripping the wheel, trying to process what had happened. The encounter felt surreal, like a dream I couldn't shake. Had that car really been chasing him? Or was it all in his head? The unease lingered. What if they'd seen my plates? What if they were still out there watching? I drove straight to the nearest police station, my nerves frayed. Stumbling over my words, I recounted the night, the hitchhiker, the car, the chase. The officer listened, jotting notes, then nodded. "You did the right thing coming here," he said. "But be careful out there." For months, I avoided that stretch of road, taking longer routes to campus. Every time I drove at night, I checked my mirrors obsessively, half expecting those headlights to reappear. Sometimes I'd find myself scanning my car for scratches or marks, anything that might suggest I'd been targeted. The rational part of me said it was just a strange night, a one-off. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was still out there, watching. I still wonder about that hitchhiker, who he was, and what he was running from. And sometimes, in the quiet of a late-night drive, I feel the weight of unseen eyes, waiting in the dark. As a mechanic, I spend a lot of time on the road, especially on weekends when I pick up parts for my shop. I've always been the type to offer a lift to someone stranded, out in the middle of nowhere with spotty cell service. A ride can be a lifeline. Most times, it's just a quick favor, a chance to chat and feel good about helping someone out. But one evening in July 2018, that habit nearly cost me everything. The sun was sinking, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple as I drove along a quiet highway. The road was flanked by endless fields, the air warm and thick with the scent of cut grass. My radio played softly, and my mind was on the parts in my trunk, spark plugs and a carburetor for a client's vintage Mustang. Then up ahead I saw them, a couple standing beside a battered sedan, its hood propped open like a wounded animal. looked weary. The man tall and lanky with messy hair, the woman smaller, her arms wrapped around herself against the evening chill. I slowed, rolling down my window. "Need a lift?" I called. The man's face lit up with a grin. "Yeah, thanks, man. Our car's dead. We're headed to the next town." His voice was friendly, but there was a roughness to it, like he hadn't slept in days. "Hop in," I said, unlocking the doors. "I'll get you to the gas station in town." The man who introduced himself as Carl slid into the front seat, while his wife, Diane, took the back. Carl shook my hand, his grip firm, and Diane offered a quick nod, her eyes shadowed under stringy hair. They seemed normal enough at first. Carl complimented my car, a restored '72 Chevelle, and asked about the engine. I warmed to the topic, talking about my shop and the cars I worked on. Diane chimed in occasionally, asking if I worked late or often drove these roads at night. Harmless questions, I thought, just small talk to pass the time. But as the sky darkened, their questions shifted. Carl asked if I lived alone, if anyone knew my route tonight. Diane leaned forward, her voice soft but probing. "Must get lonely out here, huh? Just you and the road." Her eyes lingered on me in the rearview mirror, unblinking, and I felt a prickle of unease. I kept my answers vague, my discomfort growing. The road stretched on, empty and silent, the last light fading into dusk. Then I saw it, a glint in Carl's hand, a small serrated knife spinning casually between his fingers. My stomach dropped. "Nice blade," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "What's it for?" Carl's smile widened, too slow, too deliberate. "Oh, you know. Never know when you might need it." His tone was light, but the words carried a weight that made my pulse race. Diane leaned closer, her breath warm against the back of my neck. "You ever get visitors at the shop, late at night?" Her voice was smooth, almost hypnotic, but it sent a chill down my spine. I didn't answer, my eyes flicking between the road and the knife. The air in the car felt thick, suffocating. Carl shifted, the blade catching the dashboard light as he adjusted his grip. My hands tightened on the wheel, my mind racing. Were they casing me? Planning something worse? Without warning, I slammed on the brakes, the car lurching to a stop on the shoulder. Carl dropped the knife, and Diane gasped, bracing herself against the seat. "All right," I said, my voice hard. "End of the line. This is as far as you're going." They stared at me, stunned, as if they hadn't expected resistance. My hand instinctively moved to my waist, bluffing like I was reaching for a weapon I didn't have. Carl's eyes flicked to the knife on the floor, but he didn't move for it. Instead, he gave me that same unsettling smile. "You're making a mistake," Diane murmured, her voice low and venomous. "Out," I said, not backing down. Slowly, they climbed out, their eyes never leaving me. I locked the doors and peeled back onto the highway, watching them in the rearview mirror. They stood on the shoulder, motionless, their faces lit by my taillights, wearing those strange, knowing smiles. I drove straight to the gas station, my hands still shaking as I filled up. The cashier noticed my pale face and asked if I was okay, but I just nodded, eager to get back on the road. For weeks, I couldn't shake the image of that couple, their smiles lingering like a bad dream. I stopped picking up hitchhikers after that, and every time I drive that highway, I check my mirrors, half expecting to see them standing in the distance, waiting. As a broke college student, my old car, a rusty, rattling heap, was my lifeline. It wasn't much, but it got me where I needed to go. One rainy Friday night, I was driving back to campus from a study session. The road a slick two-lane stretch through farmland and dense forest. The rain came down in torrents, my wipers struggling to keep up. Visibility was near zero, the world reduced to a blur of water and the glow of my headlights. Halfway through the drive, I saw her, a figure standing on the shoulder, drenched and shivering in the downpour. She was young, maybe early 20s, her dark hair plastered to her face, her arms clutched tightly around herself. Something about her expression, lost, almost pleading, made me pull over without thinking. I rolled down the passenger window. "Need a ride?" I called over the roar of the rain. She nodded, silent, and climbed in, water dripping onto the seat. Up close, she looked even more fragile, her clothes soaked through, her hands trembling in her lap. "Where are you headed?" I asked, trying to sound friendly. "Just the next town," she murmured, her voice barely audible. She stared straight ahead, her eyes fixed on the road, unblinking. I tried to make small talk, asking about the weather, where she was coming from, but she didn't respond. The silence grew heavy, broken only by the rain pounding the roof and the hum of the engine. I told myself she was just cold, maybe in shock from being stranded. But then I felt it. Her eyes on me, watching from the corner of her gaze, steady and unnerving. A few miles later, she started muttering, her voice so soft I could barely make it out. "Dangerous, never safe, always watching." The words were disjointed, almost incoherent, but they sent a chill through me. "Excuse me?" I said, glancing over. Her lips kept moving, her fingers twisting together in her lap. She didn't acknowledge me, just continued her whispered chant, her eyes now locked on the dashboard. My grip on the wheel tightened. Maybe she was hypothermic or just shaken. But the longer she muttered, the more my unease grew. Then, without warning, she lunged, her hands clamping onto the steering wheel with a strength that didn't match her slight frame. She yanked it to the right, the car swerving toward the ditch. "What are you doing?" I shouted, wrestling the wheel back. The tires skidded, the car fishtailing on the wet pavement. I slammed the brakes, jolting us to a stop on the shoulder. My heart pounded, adrenaline flooding my system. I turned to confront her, but she was gone. The passenger door hung open, swinging in the rain, the seat empty. I stared, my mind struggling to process it. Had she jumped out? I stumbled from the car, rain soaking me as I scanned the roadside with my phone's flashlight. "Hello, where'd you go?" I called, my voice lost in the storm. There was no sign of her, no footprints, no shadow in the trees. Just the rain, relentless and cold. I climbed back into the car, locking the doors, my hands trembling. The seat was still wet, the faint scent of damp earth lingering. I drove to the nearest police station, my nerves frayed, and spilled the story to the officer on duty. He listened, then pulled up a file. "We've got a missing person matching that description," he said. "Mid-30s, schizophrenic, ran away from home last night. Her family said she was convinced someone was after her." A chill ran through me. Her fear, her muttering. It hadn't been just the rain. She truly believed she was in danger. The police found her the next morning, disoriented but safe, and reunited her with her family. Knowing I'd helped her, even unintentionally, brought some comfort. But I still avoid that road. And on rainy nights, I can't help but glance at the passenger seat, half expecting to see her there, dripping and staring. Owning a flower shop is demanding. Early mornings, late deliveries, in endless arrangements. But the work is rewarding. Each bouquet a small gift of beauty. One evening, after a grueling shift, I took my usual route home, a winding country road framed by towering trees. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the landscape, and the quiet was a balm after a hectic day. Then I saw her, a woman standing motionless on the shoulder, clutching something to her chest. As I drew closer, I made out her thin frame, pale skin, and dark hair. Her clothes were dated, almost vintage, and in her arms was an old porcelain doll, its cracked face and button eyes unsettling in the fading light. She was whispering to it, her lips moving in a soft rhythmic murmur. I slowed, rolling down my window. "Need a ride?" I asked, my voice hesitant. Her eyes met mine, intense and searching, and she nodded, climbing into the passenger seat. The doll rested in her lap, its lifeless gaze seeming to follow me as I drove. The air in the car felt heavy, charged with an unspoken tension. She stared straight ahead, occasionally stroking the doll's matted hair, whispering words I couldn't catch. "Where you headed?" I asked, trying to break the silence. "It's not safe here," she said softly, her eyes on the door. "She says it's not safe." I forced a laugh. "We're on a quiet road, no danger here." She looked at me, her gaze unblinking. "She always knows." Her voice was low, almost reverent, as she caressed the doll's cracked cheek. My unease grew. Her whispers continued, fragmented phrases like, "We'll be careful," and "He's helping us," as if she and the doll were conspiring. I tried to shift the conversation, asking if she lived nearby, but she held the doll to her ear, as if listening, then said, "She doesn't like questions." The air grew stifling, with the shadows of the trees stretching across the road like grasping fingers. Her muttering intensified, her eyes flicking to me, then back to the doll. I couldn't take it anymore. I pulled over, my hands shaking. "This is as far as I can take you," I said. "The next town's just ahead." She didn't move at first, just stared, her fingers still stroking the doll. Then without a word, she stepped out, clutching the doll tightly, and walked back the way we'd come. I watched her in the rearview mirror, her figure fading into the dusk, still whispering to the doll. Against my better judgment, I called out, "Are you sure you're okay?" She paused, turning to face me, her face half lit by my brake lights. "You shouldn't have stopped," she said softly. "She says you should never stop. She always knows when it's safe." Then she turned and walked on, disappearing into the shadows. I drove away, my heart racing. The image of her and that doll burned into my mind. I still take that road sometimes, but I always check the shoulder, half expecting to see her there, whispering to her cracked companion, waiting for someone else to stop. These encounters linger, each one a reminder that the road can hold secrets darker than the night itself. If these stories left you uneasy, share your own experiences below. Have you ever met a stranger on the road who wasn't what they seemed? Let's share the scare.